For most people today, human history feels simple and linear. But for a very long time, the world was shared by several kinds of humans at once. Modern humans were not the first to walk many of the lands they later called home, and they did not arrive into empty or untouched environments. When our ancestors spread across continents, they entered spaces already shaped by others who knew the land, climate, and dangers well. These others were not animals or legends, but humans who lived, hunted, and adapted in ways that felt familiar, yet deeply different. The early world was not quiet or empty, but filled with overlapping human stories, moving through the same valleys and forests. Survival was difficult even without competition, and sharing the land made every decision feel heavier and more uncertain. Food sources were limited, shelters were temporary, and climate shifts punished mistakes quickly and without warning. Meeting another group of humans could mean cooperation, tension, or careful avoidance, depending on circumstances and trust. These encounters were not always violent, but they were rarely comfortable, because misunderstanding carried serious risk. Groups learned to watch each other closely, reading tools, movement, and behavior the same way they read animal signs. Small differences mattered because they hinted at how others hunted, traveled, or defended themselves in harsh environments. Modern humans were not immediately dominant, and in many places they were newcomers learning how to survive. They had to adapt quickly, because failure meant disappearing quietly, like many groups before them. Living alongside other humans forced difficult choices about territory, movement, and shared resources. Avoiding conflict often mattered more than winning it, because injury could end survival entirely. Over time, these pressures shaped behavior, cooperation, and how knowledge was shared within groups. The presence of others made the world feel crowded, even across wide-open landscapes. Day by day, small choices slowly decided which ways of living continued and which faded away. There was no single moment when other humans vanished, only a long process of change and loss. Climate, competition, and chance worked together, reshaping the human world step by step. Eventually, fewer human voices remained until modern humans were mostly alone. Yet the story did not fully disappear because traces of these other humans remain within us today. They exist in our bodies, our instincts, and the way we adapt to uncertainty. Human history was never a single path, but many paths crossing at the same time. Understanding this changes how we see survival, identity, and what it meant to be human. In the next part, we will explore who these other humans were and how they lived beside our ancestors. Their story is not separate from ours, but deeply woven into how humanity became what it is now. When people hear that humans were not alone on Earth, it sounds shocking, but for our ancestors, this was simply normal daily reality. Modern humans met others who walked upright, used tools, made fire, and raised children just like they did. These encounters were unsettling because the differences were small enough to feel familiar, yet large enough to feel dangerous. Some other humans were stronger, built for cold climates, and capable of surviving winters that modern humans struggled with. Others were shorter, adapted to mountains or forests, and moved through the land in ways our ancestors did not expect. This meant survival was not just about animals and weather, but about understanding other humans who thought differently. Imagine meeting someone who looks like you, but hunts differently, speaks differently, and reacts to danger in unfamiliar ways. Trust was never automatic, because misunderstanding could cost food, territory, or lives in a fragile world. These were not friendly introductions or peaceful agreements written in advance. Every meeting forced quick decisions about whether to stay, leave, cooperate, or quietly avoid each other. Sometimes groups shared knowledge, food, or shelter when conditions were desperate and survival mattered more than fear. Other times, groups kept distance, watching each other from afar, learning without direct contact. Conflict was possible, but it was risky, because injury could be fatal without medicine or protection. Avoidance was often the smartest choice, even when land and resources were limited. What made this situation truly tense was that no group knew how long the others would remain. There were no borders, no clear ownership, and no rules everyone agreed on. Climate shifts constantly changed which lands were livable, forcing different human groups into contact again and again. These pressures turned coexistence into a constant test of patience, awareness, and flexibility. Small advantages mattered, like better tools, faster learning, or stronger group cooperation. Over generations, these small differences quietly shaped which groups adapted and which slowly disappeared. No one at the time knew this was a turning point in human history. Life continued normally, even as the number of humankind slowly decreased. What felt like ordinary survival was actually deciding the future of humanity. In the next part, we will explore why modern humans survived while others did not. The answer is more surprising and uncomfortable than simple strength or intelligence. For a long time, people believed modern humans survived because they were simply smarter, but this explanation hides a far more unsettling reality. Some other human groups were physically stronger, better adapted to cold climates, and capable of surviving environments that challenged early modern humans. This shows that survival was not decided by strength alone, because strength only works when the world stays stable and predictable. The ancient world rarely stayed stable, as climate shifted suddenly, turning familiar lands into empty and hostile places within generations. When food sources vanished, survival depended on how quickly a group could change its habits rather than how successful those habits once were. Modern humans showed a strange willingness to experiment, even when new ideas failed or caused short-term discomfort and risk. They changed diets, tools, and movement patterns repeatedly, refusing to rely on one solution for too long. Other human groups often depended on highly specialized ways of living that worked perfectly until conditions changed. When those conditions shifted, adaptation became slower and sometimes impossible under growing pressure. Group size quietly shaped survival because small, isolated communities had no backup when things went wrong. A single bad season, injury, or loss of knowledge could erase generations of experience completely. Modern humans formed wider networks, allowing ideas, tools, and behaviors to travel far beyond one local group. This meant a solution discovered in one place could help survival in another place many miles away. Sharing created resilience, even when individual groups struggled or failed in harsh conditions. Chance also played a role people rarely like to admit, because survival was never fair or evenly distributed. Some human groups disappeared simply because they lived in regions hit hardest by sudden climate changes. Disease, injury, or extreme weather could erase entire communities without warning or meaning. There was no final battle or clear ending, only growing silence where others once lived. Modern humans did not replace others suddenly, but gradually occupied spaces left behind over long periods of time. To those living through it, life felt normal, even as the human world quietly became smaller. By the time Earth felt empty of other humans, the story had already been decided for thousands of years. What remains today is not just survival, but traces of those lost humans carried forward in unexpected ways. Their presence did not end, but changed form, becoming part of what it means to be human now. For a long time, people assumed the other humans vanished completely, but modern discoveries revealed something far more surprising and unsettling. These humans did not simply disappear into the past, leaving nothing behind except tools and bones buried in the ground. Instead, parts of them survived in ways no one expected, carried forward quietly through generations of modern humans. When scientists began studying ancient DNA, they discovered traces of other humans still present inside many people alive today. This meant ancient humans did not only compete or avoid each other, but sometimes lived close enough to share families and futures. These moments were rare, risky, and shaped by circumstance, but they happened often enough to leave a lasting mark. The result was not one human story replacing another, but several stories blending together in uneven and unpredictable ways. Some modern humans carry small pieces of other humans in their genes, especially those whose ancestors lived in harsh environments. These inherited traits sometimes helped survival, influencing immunity, cold tolerance, and responses to extreme conditions. In this way, ancient humans who disappeared as groups still contributed to survival long after their communities were gone. What feels like extinction from the outside looks more like absorption when viewed across deep time. The world did not choose a single perfect human, but combined traits that worked under different pressures. This challenges the idea that history moves cleanly from one stage to the next without overlap or blending. Human identity was never pure or isolated, but shaped by contact, chance, and shared survival. Ancient encounters left marks not only in DNA, but in behavior, caution, and adaptability. Modern humans inherited instincts shaped by living alongside others who were similar, yet never fully predictable. These instincts still influence how people respond to unfamiliar groups, uncertainty, and competition today. The presence of other humans forced constant awareness, shaping social behavior long before cities or nations existed. Trust, distance, cooperation, and caution all evolved in a crowded human world, not an empty one. As other humans faded as visible groups, their influence remained quietly embedded in those who survived. This means modern humans are not only descendants of survivors, but also carriers of lost histories. The past did not disappear, but settled into the present in subtle and lasting ways. Understanding this changes how we see ourselves, not as lone winners, but as the result of shared survival. Humanity became what it is through contact, adaptation, and blending, not isolation. The Earth once held many kinds of humans, and traces of that world still live within us today. As thousands of years passed, the human world slowly became quieter, not because life became easier, but because fewer kinds of humans remained. Land that once held different camps, tools, and traditions began to show fewer signs of diverse human presence. To those living at the time, this change did not feel dramatic or important, because it happened gradually across many lifetimes. People still hunted, raised children, and worried about survival without realizing something rare was being lost around them. The absence of others was not noticed all at once, but felt like longer distances between encounters and fewer unfamiliar signs. Over time, modern humans stopped expecting to meet different kinds of humans beyond their own groups. The world felt more predictable, but also more fragile, because survival depended on fewer ways of living. When only one type of human remained, mistakes became more costly, because there were no alternative paths to learn from. Earlier, different humans acted like experiments running at the same time, each adapting in their own way. Some failed, some survived, and together they explored what was possible in a harsh world. When that diversity faded, humanity became stronger in some ways, but more vulnerable in others. A single successful strategy replaced many smaller ones, making survival depend on maintaining that balance. Climate continued to change, animals continued to migrate, and the Earth remained unpredictable as ever. Without other humans nearby, modern humans had to rely only on themselves to adjust and recover. This forced faster innovation, but also increased pressure, because there was no one else to learn from up close. The quiet world pushed humans to expand, explore, and fill empty spaces left behind. This expansion felt like progress, but it also marked the end of something ancient and complex. Humanity became alone without ever choosing to be alone. The silence of other human voices was not a victory, but a consequence of survival unfolding over time. Even today, this quiet still shapes how humans see themselves at the center of the world. We rarely imagine alternatives to who we are because no others remain to challenge that idea. Yet the past reminds us that being human was once a shared condition, not a single identity. That shared world disappeared quietly, leaving modern humans to carry its memory forward. The Earth remembers this crowded past, even when people forget it. Understanding that loss changes how we see survival, progress, and what it truly cost. Humanity did not rise alone, but it learned to live as if it always had been. As other humans slowly disappeared, a disturbing realization emerged, even if no one could clearly explain it at the time or put it into words. If other humans survived extreme cold, hunger, and danger for thousands of years, why did only one kind remain while the rest vanished? The answer is unsettling because it shows survival was not fair, clean, or based on strength, intelligence, or effort alone. Small advantages gained by timing, location, or chance often mattered more than planning, skill, or long experience in a changing world. Being in the wrong region during a sudden climate shift could erase an entire human group within just a few generations. Losing elders meant losing memory, and without memory, survival became blind, repetitive, and dangerously fragile. Modern humans were not always better prepared, but sometimes simply survived moments that others could not escape. This challenges the comforting belief that history rewards the best and removes the rest in a logical and meaningful way. Instead, survival often favored those who adapted slightly faster, even when their solutions were incomplete or imperfect. Coexistence between different human groups created pressure that rarely allowed stability or long-term balance to exist. Avoidance, retreat, and silence may have ended more human histories than violence ever did in the ancient world. Groups caught between tradition and sudden change often faded quietly without leaving clear signs behind. No one recorded these moments because writing did not exist to preserve doubt, fear, or hesitation. Bones and tools remain, but the decisions that mattered most vanished with the people who made them. As fewer human groups remained, modern humans stopped expecting alternatives to themselves. Human behavior slowly became the norm instead of one variation among many possible ways of being human. Being alone on Earth was not a goal humanity chose, but a result that arrived without warning or celebration. With no others nearby, comparison disappeared, and assumption quietly replaced awareness. The world felt simpler, but also more fragile, because there were no other paths left to observe. Diversity once acted like protection, offering multiple answers to the same survival problems. When that diversity vanished, everything depended on a single way of being human. This increased pressure to expand, experiment, and adapt faster than ever before. The silence left behind by other humans was not empty, but filled with lasting consequences. Modern humans inherited not only survival, but responsibility for every remaining choice. That responsibility still shapes how people respond to uncertainty and difference today. Curiosity mixed with caution, interest mixed with fear, echoing a time when others like us walked nearby. The most uncomfortable truth is that humanity was shaped just as much by those who vanished as by those who remained. Their absence defined limits, risks, and possibilities long after they were gone. The world feels normal today only because alternatives no longer stand beside us. Understanding this changes how we see survival, progress, and the true cost of being alone. At some point in deep history, without ceremony or awareness, modern humans became the only humans left on Earth, and this quiet change reshaped everything that followed. No one realized it immediately, because disappearance does not announce itself when it happens slowly across thousands of years and many generations. The land looked the same, the animals behaved the same, and daily survival continued, even as all other human voices faded from the world. For the first time, every human face belonged to the same kind, removing comparison and slowly turning one way of living into the only way. Without other humans nearby, habits felt natural instead of chosen, and traditions felt permanent instead of flexible or temporary. This created confidence but also made humanity more fragile, because there were no alternative ways of living left to observe. Earlier, different humans acted like living experiments, showing multiple solutions to the same survival problems under the same sky. When that diversity disappeared, mistakes became more costly because there was no one else to learn from directly. Being alone increased pressure to rely on memory, cooperation, and shared stories to explain an unpredictable world. Rules became stronger, identity became clearer, and belonging became more important than difference. Humans slowly began to see themselves as separate from nature rather than part of it, changing how the world was understood. Animals became something to manage instead of share space with, shaping later ideas of control and ownership. Yet, beneath this confidence remained instincts shaped by a crowded human past, including caution, fear, and curiosity toward others. These instincts did not disappear because they were learned over thousands of years living beside other humans. The loneliness of humanity was not chosen, but inherited quietly through survival and chance. It feels normal today only because there is nothing left to compare it with. Understanding this moment explains why humans search so deeply for connection, meaning, and identity. The Earth once held many kinds of humans, and the silence they left behind still shapes who we are. When other humans vanished, something important was lost, that had nothing to do with strength, intelligence, or physical survival, but deeply affected how humanity developed afterward. Different human groups once carried different solutions to the same problems, offering variety in thinking, behavior, and ways of adapting to danger. That diversity acted like protection because when one approach failed, another way of living could still succeed nearby. When only one kind of human remained, survival became dependent on a single path, with no alternatives left to observe or borrow from. This made humanity powerful in its unity, but also more vulnerable when that single strategy struggled under new pressure. Mistakes that once affected only one group now affected everyone, because there were no parallel human worlds left running. Creativity increased out of necessity, but resilience decreased because failure had wider consequences than before. The loss was quiet and invisible because people cannot miss what they never personally experienced or remembered. Yet the shape of that loss still influences how humans react to uncertainty, difference, and unfamiliar ideas today. Deep down, humanity remembers a time when being human had many forms, even if that memory survives only as instinct. When humanity became alone, the world did not celebrate or change its rules, but continued exactly as before, indifferent to how rare that moment truly was. With no other humans nearby, modern humans slowly became the measure of everything, treating their own behavior as natural rather than one option among many. The absence of alternatives shaped confidence, belief, and culture, making human ways feel permanent even though they were shaped by chance and loss. Survival continued, but now every mistake mattered more, because there were no parallel human paths testing different solutions at the same time. Humanity expanded into empty spaces, not realizing those spaces were once filled with other lives, ideas, and ways of surviving the same challenges. Over time, memory of others faded, leaving only instincts, fragments of behavior, and genetic traces buried deep inside modern populations. What remained was a single human story, carrying the weight of many stories that never reached the present. This is why humanity often feels both powerful and uncertain, confident and restless at the same time. The world we inherited feels normal, only because no other human world survived beside it. Being alone was not a destination humanity chose, but the outcome of survival unfolding quietly over deep time. That quiet outcome still shapes how humans see themselves, the planet, and their place within it. When modern humans became the only humans left, the planet did not become safer, kinder, or more predictable, but human responsibility quietly increased. Every choice, mistake, and adaptation now belonged to a single human story, with no parallel versions running alongside it. Without other humans nearby, humanity lost the chance to observe different answers to the same problems unfolding at the same time. This meant progress accelerated in some ways, but resilience weakened because failure now affected everyone at once. The world began to feel centered on humans, not because humans deserved it, but because no alternatives remained to challenge that idea. Nature slowly became something to control, manage, or reshape, instead of something shared with similar beings. This shift laid the groundwork for later ideas of dominance, ownership, and separation from the natural world. Yet beneath those ideas remained instincts shaped by a crowded past, when humans watched others closely to survive. Caution toward strangers, fear of difference, and curiosity mixed with unease all trace back to that earlier world. These feelings are not flaws, but echoes of a time when being human meant navigating many versions of humanity. The loneliness of the modern human world is not empty, but full of inherited memory and pressure. Humanity carries not only survival forward, but the weight of being the last version standing. That weight still shapes how people search for meaning, connection, and certainty in an uncertain world. The story of other humans did not end in defeat, but in absorption, silence, and continuation through us. What remains today is not proof of superiority, but evidence of how fragile survival has always been. The Earth once held many kinds of humans, and the world that followed was shaped by their absence as much as by our presence. This is the quiet truth behind being human now.